Hi, Tom here. I'm an AI/software entrepreneur. I'm going to be showing you how to build a Django and React app with automatic type safety between them. This is really cool. We'll be using Django Ninja on the back end, which is a lovely, lovely tool, and then React with TypeScript. So here's the guide I wrote. And the point is, this is the type safety magic. So the magic is that we will make a change in our Django model, and then we'll be running automatically. We'll be running a script that automatically picks up the new field from our API docs and then generates new types for our front end to use using this OpenAI slash hyphen TypeScript. And then our IDE will immediately show errors if we in the front end for the bits of code that we need to change, and then we just update our front end. So it's like a we will keep type safety from the Django ORM layer all the way through to the front end of React. If you want to skip straight to the magic part of me showing the final product, you can click here. If you just want to pull down the finished repo, feel free to do that. I will include that in the article below, but I'm going to create a new one. Cool, so we're just going to follow along, but I'll walk you through each step and how to do it. So you're going to have your backend Django using Django Ninja, and then your front end using React. And I've done another video on using Django and React, Django Ninja and React, and Django and React. Feel free to check those out. But this is superior because we're going to have this end-to-end type safety. So let's go through. So let's just set up our Django project first. We can just go to our terminal and then copy in this text here. We're going to use UV. Really recommend UV. It's just, you can see how quickly everything's installed there. Yeah, it's a package manager written, essentially a replacement for pip, and it's written in Rust. Here it is by Astral. Really recommended. And that's how you install it. Okay, cool. So you can see now we've set up our Django backend, and yeah, so nice to use Django again after having used Next.js a lot. Everything's just simpler. And then we've also installed Django Ninja. Django Ninja is a lot like Django REST frame. No, it's not like that. It does the same purpose. It's a lot like Fast API, but a Django version. And it's really, really nice, as you see. It reduces a lot of the code. You don't have to write serializers files, which would always get out of date. And yeah, it's as simple as this to set up an API. And I'll show you how to do it. And then we're also going to use Pydantic. Actually, I'm not sure we need Pydantic, but let's see that. And we're going to use MyPy for type checking and type checking against Django. Django stubs to add that. Rough is just going to be our linter. We don't actually need that, but that's nice for neatness. And Django calls headers. Again, I'm not actually sure if we need that. Whatever, it doesn't really matter if we overlap a little bit. I think that might be built into Django Ninja. Doesn't matter. We'll continue. Cool. Okay, now we'll create our app. Python manage.py startup. By the way, if you want to skip to the React part, feel free to do that, but we'll just run through Django now. Okay, yep, we've created our API, and now we're going to change our settings file. I'd normally call this core, actually. It's fine with backend for the moment. Because this is all backend really, so backend is not the best name. We'll go with it for the moment. And paste this in. So this is what are the key changes here? Set our secret key to dev only. That's fine. You'd change that in production. Feel free to check out my other tutorials on building full apps or how to do that. Allowed host, we'll just set it to star. That's not good practice. You'd want to set this to localhost. Maybe I could actually just send this to localhost. It's fine let's just set it to localhost. No, I'll just leave it as is. But you would want to set that to localhost or to whatever your domain is that your front end is running on. API, our app, standard Django stuff, standard Django template stuff, and then we'll just use this SQLite database for ease. And then allow all origins. That again, don't do that in production. This is just to test you'll need to change that if when deploying to production. Okay, cool. Now let's create our models. And we're just going to do a simple book, sort of a series of books. The main aim here is not to show models, it's just to show the type safety and how it propagates. And now we'll create auto-generated schemas for this essentially replaces the purpose of the serializers in the Django REST framework would use. I think I would always use Django Ninja rather than Django REST framework now. The problem is you get into Django REST framework, you end up writing loads of really complex serializers and updating them. It's yeah, inefficient. Okay, so we'll create a schemas.py. Yeah. Schemas.py. And these are essentially saying what you're expecting from your models to contain. So we have a book in and book out. The difference is when you're putting a book in, you're not going to need an ID because that's the ID that will be set. That's the database ID of the row. Just like I wonder if there's I can show you one. Yeah, so that's the ID. That's an example. This is from my product Amazing Photos, but ID. But this is only set on the database layer. Each one needs a unique one. So when you're taking book in other words, you're getting the data from the front end, the user doesn't know what the correct ID is to set. So we're not expecting any ID. Whereas here, when we get out, we expect all the fields here. And then the ID, if you probably know, the ID is implicit within Django, so it's in there, so it's not displayed. Okay, now let's move on to, feel free to leave any questions or comments, by the way. Now we'll move on to API/views. So here's and so we're just going to paste in all this, and I'll run you through it. This is just lovely Django Ninja. You don't have to do loads of, you just do really simple URLs. Again, that's the one drawback of Django compared to with its explicit URL-based routing compared to Next.js, which has Next.js has a file path object storage. So you create sort of like a different folder. I think maybe it's called folder-based routes. So you create folders, and each folder corresponds to a different part of your route. Whereas here you explicitly state it. But Django Ninja does it really nicely, in that you just have to define the route here on the view, and you don't have to define it separately on the URL. We need to just define it with this decorator. Very nice. So yeah, let's run through this. So given models there, getting the schema, and then we're saying, okay, it's going to be a GET request to that particular route, that URL, and then the expected response will be a list of book outs to get all books, and that's essentially giving you the type there. Class, which is our schema that we defined. And then you get the query set, all the books. And then where's the post books? This is going to be a creator book, and you can see book out. Should that be book in? Yes, yeah, that will be response. And then the payload, there we go, that's a better example. The payload will be book in. So that's what we'll be getting from the front end. And then this is the book out that we'll be getting, which will contain the ID. Great. Now let's move on and wire up the URLs. Oh, yeah, lovely Django. Lovely Django and lovely Django Ninja. So we'll create a URLs. No, we'll just go straight to our backend URLs here. Paste over what we've got at the moment. This is the standard admin. We'll just keep that. And then this is our API. Our API corresponds to here. That's our app. And then views, and import API, and that's our Django Ninja API, which just sets everything up for us. So it's as simple as that, and then by having that API, we can just define all the URLs in line. Absolutely lovely. Cool. So that's pretty much it. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let's make our migrations. So in other words, set up our migrations, and then let's push them to the database, which will SQLite, and then let's run the server. You can see SQLite has popped in there, and then our migrations have been created here to create our new book. And then if we go to, yep, that's exactly what we see. And then let's go to our API, and you will see another nice thing of Django Ninja. Oh, you will not see that quite there. API/docs. Wonderful. So it even has this built-in swagger, which only by us including this API.get books, just by doing that, it's created these very nice Swagger docs, and we can test it if we want. Yeah, try it out, execute, and no books. There you go. That's our response body. Lovely. So that's our backend set up. Amazing. And oh yeah, and there you go. And then this, you can see this is the JSON. We'll be using this implicitly in a moment. Cool. Now let's set up our type checking. Important. We want to have good, just avoid type errors. So we're going to create a mypy.ini in root folder. Py.ini. MyPy is going to be our type checker. That's our version. These are some settings and configurations about what these aren't essential, but this is essentially the style of type checking that I want. So I don't want to ignore missing inputs. I don't want to, I do want to warn if we're returning any, as in like an any type. So that's where it's very non-defined, very ill-defined. And then we'll create, this isn't barely necessary actually. This is just to do linting. I'll add it just for completeness. Don't worry about, you can completely skip this off if you want. Yeah, this is for linting. Okay, now let's check our type safety. And so we'll go to create a new terminal and just run here. We're in the root, and then we run UV, so replacing pip, and run MyPy API backend. Let's see if there are any type errors. Yep, no type errors found. That was a little slow. Let's try running it again. Cool, yeah, it was probably just doing some caching the first time. Or it will look for changes on latter. And when you're a developer, you'll want to have this set up probably to watch, and so it's continually running in the background. I won't do that right now, but yeah, you can look that up or ask ChatGPT to do that for you. Cool, and we could also run linting here. Let's run it just for fun. Oh, cool, found 4 errors. That will be due to some linting errors, and then I just had the fix, so it corrected them. That's just more formatting. Cool. Now let's move on to section 3 and setting up the front end. So we're going to create a React app with Vite. I've got another tutorial on setting up React apps, but we'll do it all here. And let's open up this terminal so it's clearer for you. So we just want to paste in this is a kind of series of settings. We still need to define it. We'll call the folder for that React app front end, and then we'll install using pnpm. And we also want to install OpenAPI TypeScript. This is the critical thing that we'll be using to generate the types from the OpenAI schema, and the and Django Ninja provides that OpenAPI schema that I showed you here. OpenAPI, yes. And then we'll also add this, which is really nice, which is an OpenAPI fetch, and this is a little client that we'll use in React to fetch things from the OpenAPI, and it will also be typed by default. All really lovely. So let's run all this in our terminal. Hopefully that will run. Yeah, so we're downloading, and we want to select framework, React, yes to TypeScript, great. And now I think that run the next. So now here is the magic. So like I said, we've got this OpenAPI here that Django Ninja is generating for us from the models and schema, and it's just really lovely. And then you've also got this lovely and then Django Ninja also as well just allows you to define the route with a decorator simply, and then produces this lovely Swagger docs for all your entirely updated for all your routes. Yeah, so lovely. So anyway, so we've got this OpenAI, and now we've got this Open API, and now we're going to generate types from this. Very, very cool. And that our front end will then use to generate types from the back end. Okay, now we run it, and we're going to output, and there they are, to src lib, and here they are. How cool is this? And so you can see we've even got the particular routes and what they're expecting. I'm not actually sure how, yeah, well, I imagine there will be uses for that. But the key points we want are scheme, bookout, ID. These are TypeScript types. And we've also got, it's very comprehensive, we've also got all the operations as well. Maybe we can use them, but these are the key parts that we will want to be using in our React app. This is brilliant. As I've written here, yeah, these are the fully typed parts, and we can see them here. So now we can create a typed API client. So this is going to now for our React app to call the backend and keep the types as it returns the JSON. So we're going to It's really simple because we're using OpenAPI fetch and it's automatic again. So we simply go to your src file, src folder here, create a new file called, what did I call it? Okay, new file inside lib. So right next to where the types are generated, and we're going to create it, just call it client. Right. Client.ts. Paste this in. And so this just, oh, so nice. Yeah, fine, we'll change that. So it just takes the types from the file next to it in the lib, and then uses OpenAPI fetch, and then it will target our base URL here. If side note, if you want to change your Django settings to only allow something, this is what you would to only allow, what is it? Cross domain, yeah, allow all origins, yeah, allowed host. You should marry that up with, well, you should marry that up to the base URL there, and this should also be an environment variable if you're doing it in production, but it's fine for dev. Yeah, back to it. So this is really cool. And now we move forward, and then we can just set up our React app, and then we're just going to call this in a fully typed way. So let's create the actual React app. So we'll go to src and then main. It's essentially the same thing. I'm just copying. Yeah, it was just the same thing. But let's create some React components using our auto-generated type-safe React components. Okay, so I'll copy this and I'll run you through it. It's all really simple, but really just simple, fast, efficient. It's sort of what I love. Okay, now let's go to our app. I'm just going to paste over this. This is the default React sample. And so you see here, simple app. We've got some books loading. We're going to load the books, and we're going to call that API/books. If you remember, in our Django views, API get books, and set the state. If there's an error, say failed, and then we're going to create a book. And so this will be the create of our CRUD app, and we'll get this title, author, etc. from the form, the inputs rather, that we use here. And then we're just going, and then when the user clicks handle submit, then they will post that to our backend, and that it will be at API/books, and it will be API post/books, and it's going to be, and we're going to be expecting a book in, like I mentioned earlier, and it's going to return a book out, which we will then add to our front end. So yeah, post there, and then this just refreshes the book. We could actually just await this by saying like results, and then append that to any books that we've got earlier. But this is fine. This is just a full refresh. Refresh the list and show some errors. So yeah, and now let's see it. Let's just check if, yeah, well, I haven't missed anything out. We just need to run it. pm run dev. And then go to where it's running. We'll make sure you're running the Django backend as before. It needs to be running at the same time. And there are our books. How cool is that? And let's enter some names. Mr. Robert and Marcus Aurelius. Let's call it 42. Let's say it's a future book. Great. Refresh the page, and there you go. It's gone into our database. And oh yeah, so lovely. Obviously, this is a very simple demo, but you can expand, and you just built full front end, the full stack app, or front end with the front end and the back end. The really cool part is this type safety, and oh yeah, and now we can also on the back end just execute this again. Where's the button? Here, execute. Yep, there you go. That's what the back end is fetching from SQLite. And yeah, we can add some more tests here. I'm not gonna, yeah, these are a bit superfluous actually. This is more just to check the code all works. But let's just focus on the type safety magic here. So now we add a new field, and let's say description here to our Django backend in some models. I've added description. That's not a very good example actually. I'm going to just add a different field that's mandatory, and we're going to call it page count. Must be a positive integer field. You can't have minus pages. And now we're going to create our migrations to update our database. So Python, make sure you're in the backend, make migrations. We've created the book. I deleted the previous one, so that's why. And now we're going to migrate. Cool. And now we're going to go back into our front end and run make and then generate those types automatically. And now if we go back to our now we go back to our app, and because we've run that type checker, we can go down, and you can see there is an error there already, and you can see page count is missing. Exactly, our IDE is giving us, because it's looking at the types and seeing that there must be a page count. No value, so we haven't defined that. Great, that's really clear. If I listening to, or I should have listened to my type checker more. Okay, now we go in here again. Go, hello, Marcus Aurelius again. Yeah, 2039, 123. Just check. Do I see any more errors here? Because we've got this type safety to help us out. No, I don't. Add, and there it is. This is just so, you can see this is useful on a tiny example. Imagine when you've got just any more complexity, this type safety and connecting the two gives you all the benefit, pretty much, well, I'd say the major benefit of TypeScript and Next.js, but you get this lovely Django backend experience. Let's say we get rid of page count now, and then we again run our migrations, make migrations, and then to remove it, and then migrate. Okay, it's gone, and then we run our types again. Oh, I need to go into the front end. So you might be thinking, actually, I'll come to that in a second, and then it's generated. There's immediately a warning here in your app that this doesn't exist. So one final thing you're probably thinking, oh, I have to run these scripts all the time. No, you don't. You can just automate this. So I would have it running. I would just have this running. I would have the PNP exec running with your dev server. Sorry, in your package. So change dev to be vite, and then and then run whatever the command is there, pnpm da 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 da. There's probably even a nicer way to do it that I haven't thought of. Yeah, but don't run through that process of that I've done every time. There's no need. That link below to my newsletter for more free content about AI and web development. All the best to you.